Hi everyone, we're continuing on setting up our TLearn courses with creating a quiz. So we've already created our assignments, as you can see. I'm going to go down to one of our other sections, one of our other units for this class, and I'm going to add a resource or activity. So I don't use quizzes a lot, so it's not going to be on my starred page, so I'm just going to go to activities and scroll down. Here's quiz here. So I'm just going to do a remix quiz. Again, like with the assignments, you can add a description to display if you want to, but you don't have to. So timing. Timing is actually the most important feature of a quiz. So you'll probably not just want the students to go in and take the quiz at any point that they want, unless it's something like a syllabus quiz or a review quiz, a study guide type quiz. So you want to tell it when it's going to open the quiz. I'm going to say we're going to open this one on the 25th of September at noon. Alright, so we've got that set up, and then I'm going to close the quiz. At 2 o'clock. So I've given them a 2-hour window to take the quiz where they will actually, this is asking you when the student is able to access the quiz. So when they can click remix quiz and go in and actually take it. Now what time limit is asking, if I enable this, is how long do they actually have within this 2-hour time frame to take it. So let's say that this is a short quiz. It's only going to take them 35 minutes tops, maybe 20 tops, and I give them a little extra cushion. I'll put in 35 minutes. So within this 2-hour time frame, they'll have the availability to take the quiz, and then they actually have up to 35 minutes to go in and complete it. When time expires is probably the most important thing on this whole section. So what this is asking is what happens to their quiz when time runs out. So if I'm taking this quiz and at minute 35, it shuts me down, what's going to happen to my quiz? So it has different things, and basically it's just asking you how much attention do you want your students to have to pay to the time rather than to the questions, because you can add a grace period where it's like, okay, the 35 minutes is up, go click submit, or you can say if you haven't clicked submit in this 35 minutes, you're out of luck. But the easiest thing for everyone is just to say open attempts are submitted automatically. So what this means is that when time expires, if I am on question 8 of 10, then it's going to send the 8 questions that I've answered to my instructor, and my instructor will be able to grade them without me having to click submit or finish attempt, anything like that. It's just going to submit them automatically. I won't have the ability to go take the quiz anymore, anything like that. It just submits what I've already done. Great. So this is where you can say that this is in the quiz category if you have categories set up in your gradebook. This is where you can also say, hey, if my student doesn't score 70% or higher on this quiz, then it doesn't count. And this is also where you can tell it how many attempts are allowed. So if this is something like a review quiz, you might leave it at unlimited, but if this is something like your midterm that you're setting up, you probably want it to be only 1 attempt allowed. If you do have unlimited, or if you do say you've got 3 attempts, then you want to specify the grading method. Are you going to take the highest grade, the average grade, the first attempt for whatever reason, or the last attempt that they've done? Quiz layout just asks you in terms of the logic of the quiz, sorry, not the logic of the quiz, but the display of the quiz, what you want. So how many questions do you want on a page? I'll say 3 questions. And then navigation method means how do you want the students to complete the quiz. So if you have a quiz where every question builds on the previous question, you probably want to hit that sequential button and set it there. But if you don't care if they go back and forth and answer the questions they know first and then go back, then you can just leave it at free. The default is free. Question behavior, shuffle within the questions. If you want any shuffling ever, then you want this set to yes. Okay, so if you have multiple choice questions where some of them you don't want it to be shuffled, then in that specific question you can tell it not to shuffle the answers, right? But if you have this turned to no, then it's not going to shuffle anything ever. So depending on what you want, just have that set to yes usually. The feedback types, sometimes if you're doing something like a review quiz, you want them to have immediate feedback. You can have some immediate feedback with penalties or deferred feedback with penalties. So it takes, 3 points off every time they get a question wrong. You can have it adapt with penalties. I won't go into the nitty gritty of these, but it does have the definitions here in this little question box if you want to look at those. And then each attempt builds on the last. Just leave that as no. It keeps things easy because then you don't have to make sure that your question logic is exactly perfect. Review options is the second most important thing in this. So you don't really need to do during attempt. But basically, I've set my timing so that we've got an open and a close date. So it's asking me what sort of feedback do I want my students to have as the attempt is going. So I don't want them to have anything immediately after the attempt because I want to be able to go through and grade things. And so I won't pick anything there. If I'm grading and I want them to be able to see it, so if I grade Susie's first and I'm getting through there, but I want Susie to be able to see how she's done, then while the quiz is still open, I can click through these things. But for the most part, you will have grades in the review options clicked for after the quiz has closed. So this is after the quiz is closed and you have graded their attempts. This is what they see. So if you want them to be able to see the questions and whether or not they got them correct in any of these things down here, like the right answer or general or specific feedback, you want to click the attempt. If you don't have the attempt clicked, they won't be able to click back through and see those things. So you can say whether you want them to get it correct, see if it's correct. You can also tell them the points. The points is what almost all of you will have clicked or selected because this is the grade. So then you have specific feedback, general feedback, right answer, and overall feedback. Specific and overall feedback are things that you will set up prior to them taking the quiz. So if you have, let's say you're building a review quiz and you want them to, on a question about atmospheric pressure, you want them to make sure that they remember these 3 things and review chapter 3, for example. You can put in specific feedback so that after the quiz is closed, when they answer that question, they'll get this specific feedback for that question. Overall feedback is the summative feedback at the end. So this is where you will see at the end of the quiz, you can say something like, hey, good job, you've survived quiz 1. Make sure you read chapter 5 for our next course or our next class meeting, something like that. General feedback and right answer are usually the ones that you're going to be working with. So general feedback is something where if you have an essay question, you can then go in and respond to that essay question and give your feedback there. So generally, these are the ones that you will be working with. I'm going to save this, save and display real fast. We'll go back in because I want to show you the difference of what it looks like once you've saved those review options. So now it's gotten rid of all of this because it knows that all I want them to see during the attempt are the questions themselves, the attempt. And it has my specific things that I want them to see after the quiz is closed in there now. Appearance, you don't have to really worry about. This is kind of metadata. Safe Exam Browser, this is like basically Moodle's version of Lockdown Browser, but it adds a lot of hassle. If you would like to learn more about Safe Exam Browser, please schedule a time with me so I can take you through all of the specifics for it. Academic Technology at trinity.edu. I will be happy to help you with that. You can require a password. You can require a delay between attempts, so if they need to wait, an hour between when they attempt it first and last, then you can do that. Or between later attempts, you can do all of those things. This is another place that asks you for browser security. We no longer have lockdown browser, so you don't need to really worry about that, but you can do this. This goes with the safe browser. Really, I don't suggest doing browser security like that. I suggest live proctoring. Once you start adding technology to things, it just complicates things like this a lot. So if you're doing a test, I really recommend live proctoring. This is where you put the overall feedback. Again, this is your summative feedback at the end of the quiz or test. Common module settings are the same as with assignments, whether or not you want it to show up, whether or not it's in groups, same as restrict access, activity completion, and tags. So once you save your quiz, you've got all of the baseline settings set up, and now it's giving you this little notice that say no questions have been added. So the next thing we're going to do is set up the actual meat and potatoes of the quiz and add our questions. This edit quiz button will go away, so what you want to make sure that you do is, if you use this the first time, that's fine, but you should know that to get back to where you add questions, it's here in the little edit settings button, and then you'll go down to where it says edit quiz. And this is the page that you will add your questions on. So as with everything, there are a few different options on this page too in terms of your setup and how you add things. So the first thing is, if for whatever reason you have a maximum grade different than 100, so let's say each of your quizzes is worth 25 points, you want to go ahead and put that there and hit save. And then basically it does the math for you. So even if you have like 86 questions, it'll calculate it out to how much of 25% or 25 that is. So I'm going to change this back to 100 just so that everything makes sense as we're going. Same thing here. It'll tell you like what percent of 100 you got based on if you have, for example, 8 questions that are all 1 point apiece. The shuffle button asks you whether or not you want to shuffle the questions within the quiz. And so this is one of the places where having that shuffle setting in the actual quiz settings is going to be important. And then also here's where you add your questions. So now there's a few different things. You can add a new question straight from here. You can add something from the question bank, or you can add a random question. So for 1 second, I'm going to actually click off of our quiz and back to our course homepage. And I'm going to go up here to course management, and you have this list called question bank. So this is where you can create your questions. So you can actually create your questions here. So I've already got a bunch of questions created, but you can create questions here by hitting the create new questions. You can also edit your question tags here. So I'm just going to real quick manage my tags. So if you already have tags created, you can click, but as you see here, I have no suggestions. So I'm just gonna put pre-semester on here and let it know that this is something that I would do before the semester. And so I have that question tagged. Now this is going to come into play if you have, for example, multiple questions, multiple quizzes. If you have If you're importing questions, if you're using, for example, like Cengage or a specific textbook that comes with a question bank, then you can tag your things. And so I've got 2 honor code questions. So I'll tag this quiz standard. So this is going to be a standard question for a quiz. And then if I create a new question, I'll go through what all of these mean in 1 second here. I'm going to create a new question that has to do with mythology. Pretend there is a great quiz question right here. I'll say this is worth 5 points in the quiz. And then I'm going to give my students plenty of room to have them enter some text. They don't have to enter any attachments on this one. And down here in the tags, I'm going to give this quiz 1 tag and a mythology tag. Save. Okay. So now when I look in my questions, I can see this one's here, and then if my screen was a little bigger, you'd see the mythology tag here. And this is where you will also import, and it'll ask you what kind of file you're importing, so you'll know based on where you're getting your questions from, and it'll let you import your questions from file and add them to the question bank. So I'm going to go back to our quiz real fast. Quiz, not edit settings. So now I'm going to add a question. So I can add a new question, but now since I have a question bank, I can click this button and add a question from my question bank, and I can choose one of these. So this is a quiz, my quiz standard. So I'm going to put in the honor code question real fast. So I've got that. It's 15 points. Or if you don't want to give them points for answering the honor code question, you can zero it out. Gotta click the pencil, I forgot. There we go. So it's actually no points now. So the other thing I can do is add a random question. So this is where your tags become very, very important. So as you can see, this just gives you all of your questions. So I could add a random question from here and it'll just go through all of these. But if I've got all of my questions tagged, then I can put in which tag I wanted to add a random question from, and then it will add a random mythology question. So right now, random question. So right now it's only going to, I'm going to put C. It's only going to give me the 1 question because this is the only question with a mythology tag. But if I had, say, 6 different questions that had that mythology tag, I'd be able to see specifically which one it added to my quiz by clicking this view button right here next to the question title. But this adds a random question for me. It also tells me how much this question is. And so I actually added that as a 5-point question. So sometimes you will have to go through and make sure that it's adding it in the right way. It didn't that time. It's picky. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But that's how you add a random question. Now lastly, I'm going to show you adding a new question because I want to go through the different question types. There are different calculation questions that you can use if you're doing some sort of math one. The combined question lets you add different question types, a couple of different question types, so a couple of different multiple choice and kind of fill in the blank style questions. It takes a little bit of setting up though, so just understand that. Drag and drop into text, drag and drop into markers, drag and drop onto image. Basically, it asks you to upload something where something is going to be dragged and dropped. Let's use image as an example. I can upload a picture, say, of a Burger King logo, a picture that has the Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, and Five Guys logos on it. And then it will ask you to designate different areas, and for each area, add the answer that goes there. And then when the students actually take it, it'll give them the different answers as little text boxes, and they'll be able to drag and drop them to whichever area they think is the correct answer. Embedded answers is kind of like a fill in the blank one, but it's this specific add-on, so it's kind of hard to use. If you're going to do fill in the blank, short answer, or anything that has to do with the students kind of typing anything in, I would suggest just using essay. That way you don't have to do setup, because for this one, for select missing words and short answer, what you have to do is you have to set up the correct answer for the blank, and it holds the student to exactly how you set it up. And so if the question is which Texas city has the Alamo, and you write in San Antonio, Texas, with Texas written out, and they put San Antonio, TX, it will count it wrong. So you would still have to go through and kind of make sure that all of the questions are right or wrong based on that. So to kind of mitigate that, just do an essay. You still have to go through it, but at least it's not counting things wrong, and then you have to fix things. There's matching and multiple choice, which is pretty standard. There's a number entry one. The multiple response one lets you do multiple choice with multiple response thing, like it says, but good for if you have more than one correct answer, and then of course true or false. And down here is descriptions. So this is something where you can just type in a little bit of text. So if your quiz, for example, or your exam has different sections, then you can say, okay, well done on the matching section. The next section has essay questions where you'll be asked to blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to real fast just take us through. Essay is pretty straightforward. It'll give them basically a text box, and it'll ask you settings like how long do you want them to have, how many lines do you want them to have to answer, can they attach things. That's good if you have them doing anything with images, where they need to attach a picture, those sorts of things, but it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to use multiple choice as an example, because this is the one that has some specific settings that you have to pay attention to. So naming my question. Again, pretend there's a really awesome quiz question here. It's going to be 2 points. This is going to be one answer only, and then I want it to shuffle the choices. So this is the other place where that shuffle setting comes into place. So you can turn this off, and it'll just give them the choices as you mark them down, but it starts with it toggled on, so it shuffles the choices. And if you want them numbered differently for whatever reason, differently than ABC, you can do that. So basically you have these different text boxes for your choices. Okay, so for your correct answer, you'll want to give it a score of 100. Now, sometimes there are answers that, maybe this is, for example, a review quiz, where you're just letting them kind of study off of it. Maybe there's an answer where it's not right, but you can see where their logic was, and you want to give them kind of partial credit and some feedback. So now this is where your review options come in. Remember we put together review options in the settings. This is the specific feedback that they'll get after the quiz is closed, once you allow them to go review the attempt. So it gives you plenty of spaces. You can create more spaces if you want. If this is a review quiz, you can give them multiple tries and give them penalties for each try. But we'll just make it a regular question for now. And here we have our questions. So here's our quiz for now. I can go back to the main page and I can preview what my quiz is going to look like. So this is what my quiz will look like for my students. So this is my essay question that I have for them. This is my multiple choice question that I have for them. Here's the honor code question. You can have them write whatever it is. I think I have mine set up to explain what the honor code means to you and how you intend to follow it this semester, so they actually have to think a little bit about the honor code. And then finish attempt. So I'd ask them to submit all and finish. And that's how they'll take their quiz. That's what it'll look like for your students. So that's how you set up a quiz. There are a lot of steps, so if there is anything that you have questions on, please feel free to reach out to me at academictechnology@trinity.edu, and I will be happy to help you.